Immobilien, Städte, Menschen. Der ULI Germany Podcast mit Gestaltern der gebauten Umwelt, Machern der Immobilienbranche und Persönlichkeiten, die unsere Städte prägen.
We find ourselves in an extremely explosive time. First and foremost corona-related, but also many other issues are shaking up societies worldwide. With this podcast, we've examined the corona crisis and its effect on our industry from all sides, even before the lockdown mid-March with Paul Feldhoff, when we were facing the big mountain of uncertainty, with Klaus Deserichs from Dresden Sommer on digitization strategies and smart buildings, with Uli Höller from ABG about developments, how we work today and in the future, and the mood in the industry, with Alexander Otto from ECE about the effects on shopping centers, retail and cities, with Thomas Sevcik and Anja Meyers in Zurich about how Switzerland manages all relevant topics around Corona and much more. We've embarked on a journey through Corona crisis and illuminated every phase of its development. Today, at the beginning of July, we see a little clearer, which does not make things easier because we're still facing huge challenges of all kinds. That is why today I would like not only discuss real estate topics, which of course play a role, but also focus on socially and entrepreneurially relevant topics. My name is Stephanie Baden, and the person I'm talking to is perfectly suited for this. Please enjoy the following conversation, which we've recorded digitally. I welcome Jürgen Fenk. Jürgen, you're a member of Signa's Group Executive Board and are responsible for banking, capital markets, as well as capital sourcing, proptech, debt funds, and insurance business. Which of these areas are the most fun?
The most fun is definitely the proptech part. When I joined Signa, I founded Signa Innovations with the purpose of investing in interesting startups and also technology platforms on the one hand, and on the other to drive the digital transformation of Signa. And over the last 24 months, it has been very refreshing. And most importantly, I learned a lot.
So PropTech as the first and only one?
No, not the only one, but you asked for the most fun. It's the most fun. Everything I do is somehow fun, but something I'm doing since many, many years. So has not the same degree of fun. It is obviously very professional, but the fun and intellectually stimulating part is around PropTech technology, venture capital, even if it's a small part of my day-to-day business.
Mm-hmm. So coming to a topic which is maybe at the moment not that fun. So Signa somehow is something dazzling. On the one hand, this is due to the founder René Benko, an entrepreneur who was and still is in the headlines again and again for various reasons, but also to outstanding projects. Last year, the Karstadt Kaufhof deal was the largest in Germany. Since the current crisis has hit the retail sector enormously, could you please describe the current situation around Galeria Karstadt Kaufhof?
Well, Galeria Karstadt Kaufhof is, as everybody can read in the press, under the so-called credit protection scheme, in German Schutzschirmverfahren, which now, for the company appears a much better option than going for loans with state guarantee, like many other companies have chosen to, like big retailers or also Lufthansa. Galeria Karstadt Kaufhof is and will not carry the burden for the next years of such debt. On the other hand, the credit protection scheme enables the company to cut the debt and to improve their financial situation substantially. Now, I have to say, since we're in the middle of the process, I can't mention, also for legal reasons, any specifics that are not public. But importantly for the city, for the cities as much as for the people, is the question, where and how many stores would need to get closed after this process. And it's too early to say how many. I'm confident that it will be less than what has been so far mentioned in the press. The mayors of many cities are getting involved and trying to help, mainly in moderating between landlords and Galeria Karstadt Kaufhof as the tenant. But what I want to say, what I can say is that the company, its management, and also the restructurer will act in the most responsible way possible. So the aim is not to close the most, but the less stores in Germany.
Well, to be honest, I hardly ever shop at Kaufhof or Karstadt. And as the figures already showed before the crisis, I'm not the only one. What is Signa's strategy for a successful department store concept? Maybe after the crisis or now?
Well, when we talk about Signa, Signa is a shareholder. The business is run by its management. So Galeria Karstadt Kaufhof is working very hard on the transformation of the concept. The concept of everything under one roof department store has a tradition for more than 100 years. And obviously with online shopping, but not only with online shopping, with also different ways of expectations from consumers, this concept has to be adjusted not only to today's, but also to tomorrow's world. And that means it has to be more attractive also to a younger generation. And that means not only modernizing it in the way of fitting it out, but to do a complete transformation. The business model has to change, and the business model will change, because the positive thing with the protection scheme is that it will allow the company, after it comes out, to reinvest into that transformation year by year with a substantial amount of money. That is also a moral commitment during this credit bracket check scheme process. And this investments go into, as I said, on modernization. It has to be a much more attractive way of shopping, but it also goes into transformation, like introducing omni-channel processes, inner city logistic, things like shop-in-shop concepts, using floors for alternative usage, like potentially also flexible offices. And then also, last but not least, to invest in additional businesses like modern payment and consumer credit services. It's a long way, but the way has started, the process has started. And by the way, before COVID, the company has started to accelerate that transformation, and it will continue once this crisis is over.
Well, Signa is a group of companies with many more divisions than retail. You are also investors and developers and have an eye on the future. Signa Innovations, as you already mentioned, want to guide the way to digital tools, services, and business models, and emphasize deep change management even in business models. What are your visions for Signa, and how are you adapting your business models and your operations to get there?
Well, digital transformation, and I'm doing this now since 2 years here in this company, does not happen overnight. It is also not only about implementing software and technology. I mean, I always tend to say a bad process to be digitalized is a bad digitalized process. So you have to adjust processes before you even start to digitize them. The whole thing is foremost a cultural change. People have to be open for change and for doing things differently. And this is not obvious. So it's a big task for management and leadership. I believe we are on good track. Signa has an open mind, has an entrepreneurial spirit that you need, has creativity, and a toolbox. And the toolbox comes partly from where we invest in Signa innovation in terms of startups, but also from other startups that we use for use cases. And we have gladly the resources to adjust to constantly changing environment. So at the end of the day, it's a combination of culture change, technology, willingness, leadership, talents that you need. And the whole thing is complex. So, it takes time.
Well, between you and me, Jürgen, what are the next big things that you focus on?
In terms of technology?
In terms of investment in technology, yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is that there is no one big thing, and we are not focusing on one thing. Since we started Signa Innovations, we have been looking at more than 530 startups, and we have invested in only 12, which sounds small, but it's a relatively normal number when you when you do your selection process. And we try to diversify our investments, so we are not going for the one big thing. I mean, by the way, if I would know what it is, I would clearly go for it. But I think we are in a world where lots of different things happen. And since real estate is still not very far in terms of digitization, we have a long way to go. So we look at augmented reality, KI, IoT, the whole sensoric type with respect to IoT, data management, a lot of different things that we need for different purposes and that can help us enhance our processes, save cost, also start new businesses. And so I will tell you maybe in 2 years what the big thing was.
How would you describe the current venture capital situation? Do you think that the Wirecard affair will affect the investment environment?
Well, venture capital market or venture capital environment has been hit by the crisis of COVID-19. I think the Wirecard came just on top, but I personally don't believe that Wirecard has a big impact on the venture capital market. You know, it seems to be, and I'm very careful what I say, but it seems to be fraud. And so it may put pressure on the regulatory environment, especially in Germany. Trust in the German investment market, at least in the financial sector, but not necessarily the venture capital. Venture capital in connection to the startup world, you know, you can be looked in two ways. You have the venture capital firms that have plenty of capital available that can actually take advantage of the current situation and potentially invest at lower valuations. That happens. And then you have those who are in the process of fundraising that probably, you know, face issues in raising funds right now. But it's not different to the capital market or other segments in the investment market.
So how should PropTechs then act right now to ensure capitalization?
Well, hopefully they have the right investors. I mean, we see it not only with our participations, but we see a lot of startups suffering from COVID-19. And some of them have lost their ground of business. Some have, moved back time-wise in terms of getting revenues. I think everybody has to be cautious on cost, first of all. And then, I invite everybody to adjust their business models, if needed, to the situation. We, for our part, we communicate closely with our startups. We have always been close to the founders, and we believe we are founder-friendly investment arm. And we try together with the startups to make sure that there is sufficient funds available for the next 18 months to go. Because fundraising, as I said before, and finding new investors is probably difficult for the foreseeable future.
Well, Jürgen, you're an expert of global capital markets. How do you see the current situation, and are there any trends recognizable?
Well, first of all, the economic downturn has not yet happened. We haven't seen it yet, but it will come. I personally believe that we will see and feel the downturn somewhere around Q1, Q2 next year. So we are in this kind of window between when the crisis happened and what the consequences of the crisis will be. On the other hand, we will see and continue to see a low interest environment. So that's also a trend that will continue. I don't see why this should change. And I personally believe that investments into Germany and into the German real estate market will rather increase going forward, whether it's national or international capital. And good quality assets will continue to see yield compression in Germany. I don't know so much about other countries. It depends in other countries more about cities like London, Paris, how quickly they will recover. The debt market, I believe, will stay competitive, but more selective. Banks will look at more carefully about what they will finance, more carefully about structures. They will look more carefully about, the selection asset classes. But overall, I don't expect a bad outcome for real estate in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, coming to your last topic, coming to cities. We all know you love cities, Jürgen. You've lived in Munich, Paris, New York City, and Vienna. And currently you live in Berlin and have traveled around the globe. That's right, isn't it? Or did I miss a city where you used to live?
Well, I lived in Ireland. You forgot Ireland, which is a really fantastic city.
When was that?
Ireland, let me think, was 2003 to 2006.
Okay.
And,
So, including Ireland. So, do you still see cities as the future environment? Or do you think we will experience a new ruralization in the near future?
Well, I'm a strong believer in cities for all generations, but cities need to be livable, enjoyable, attractive, affordable, and safe. And cities need to adjust to the changes in our society and the needs of the people. I don't really see a new ruralization. I think currently it may be the case because of the situation around COVID-19, where people rather stay at home on the countryside than in an empty city where you cannot go into restaurants or museums or anything else. Now in Germany, as you know, we have more or less reopened everything and life has nearly come to normal. We wear masks, but we start to enjoy again going out, going into restaurants, sitting on the terrace now in the summer, going to a museum, have the children playing in the park, but also in a museum. And I don't see how and why this should change. But again, there's a huge pressure on cities to attract the people and with the criteria as I mentioned before, and that's not the case in every city.
I totally agree. Well, I would like to discuss with you an issue that has been out of focus in the wake of the crisis, out of the headlines, out of discussions, and maybe out of people's minds. It's about climate change and sustainability. You have children, I have children, and there is no question that we must change our way of life in order not to let the future conditions for our children escalate. The climate crisis is also an economic crisis, a crisis of democracy, and a crisis of social justice on Earth. If we look at the current situation and consider the incredible amounts that governments are now putting into the economy as stimulus packages and which are being sold to us as an investment in the future. What is your opinion on this? Are these investments in the future? Or has the great opportunity been missed to link the support to conditions that would have forced the economy to adopt sustainable management, sustainable business models?
Well, it's a difficult but excellent question. And I have to admit, I have mixed feelings about it. As a human being, I tend to say that in deflating the bubble that we have or we had would have made sense, because at the end it would have forced the society to change behavior. As somebody who is in the business world and who makes his living out of it, and who has responsibility over people, but also over for my family, I believe that this sort of deflation or not reaction from the government in such a crisis would have been a disaster for humanity in terms of, people being able to keep jobs and to get income and to live. So I believe that it is correct and right to stimulate the markets. I believe it has been good that some of these stimuluses goes into environmental friendly programs. I think that some more could have been focused more on programs that would enhance the environment. But you'd see, for example, in Germany, the discussion on stimulation to buy cars. I think it was good to stimulate only the electric cars, but there was a huge outcry from the car industry. Why? And so it's a whole, it's difficult. It's difficult for a government, but I think for now, at least in Germany, we have been doing right. Also in other countries, when I see the French government bailing out Air France with conditions on sustainability going forward, CO2 output, it is right. I think the government has to take that approach, and if they put money in the economy and in industries, it is also right that they put conditions. And when those conditions go in the right direction, like environmental and sustainability, I think it's the right approach.
How do you see the real estate industry positioned in terms of sustainability, ESG, CSR, etc.?
I mean, we're coming there. We're going there. As an industry, probably a little bit late, but there was a wake-up call, and I think now at least most of the large players have at least started their programs. Not everybody has an ESG responsible, but some sort of responsible or at least project going on. There are certain initiatives to work on the same principles. The whole thing is obviously also, triggered by the Green Book from the EU. I think it's more and more now also a leadership responsibility that has been recognized, that people have to do something. It is not just to do something for the purpose of doing something and of getting a rating. I think we have more and more people in every generation that believes that it's now the time to do something. Otherwise, the world for our generations after will be difficult.
Yeah. So the world in turmoil, crises and uprisings create a zeitgeist of uncertainty and disorientation. You have a background in economics and organizational psychology. What do you think are the basic patterns we should focus on to get things running together? What does it take to create alliances, and how can we establish a future-oriented mindset?
Yeah, I mean, we are right now in a world that has so many different problems that unfortunately make that we go in the wrong direction. We don't work together. We work each and everybody for itself. At least speaking from a country's perspective, I think this community thinking and global thinking on solutions is not happening right now. We're going in the wrong way. Now, if you bring it back and bring it down to a more micro level, I think people have recognized that solutions cannot be done by a single company or a single person, but just in a format of an agreed way, and therefore we need alliances. But it's difficult because the interest of each and everybody is potentially different. So you have to have the right processes politically, but also inside of companies to make sure that, like on the ESG side, I think ESG is a good example where instead of everybody going on its own, there is a tendency of working together, of finding solutions together, on helping each other, not reinventing the wheel, each and everybody. And that should be the model for everything in our society, in our business. Not sure if it answers your question, but I try.
It's your answer. Well, you've already mentioned leadership. So the role of leadership is now more obvious than ever, in my opinion. What are the upcoming features leaders need to maintain strong development?
I personally believe that leadership is all about how to treat people. And if you treat people well, you are also well treated. I mean, if you give people confidence and trust, they pay back to you. I always have been a believer, and I always practiced it by trying to be humble, get the people with you and not against you, and help them to develop their skill sets. And a good leader of the future is somebody who very often had a good leader in the past. because you learn and you don't necessarily take over exactly what you have experienced yourself, but you learn from different people, and then you get your right style, and therefore you should choose your leaders, and then you will become a good leader yourself.
Good point. Well, how to build trust in your team and working environment, and does it really make sense to keep up the remote way of collaborating?
Well, we all, when the lockdown came, we had no choice than working virtually. And what we do right now is not that, I couldn't jump into a plane. Actually, planes are flying again, not as much as before. And it's not nice to sit in the plane with a mask but 20 centimeters close to your neighbor. So we will all, adjust to that situation. We will certainly start flying again, and we certainly will start going to the offices again. But I think it was a good experience for a lot of people, because most of us have experienced that working remotely, virtually, has worked pretty well. But at one point, everybody has probably felt that sitting alone at home, there is something missing. So the interaction, physical interaction, really speaking with people directly, having more people around, going for a coffee, is extremely necessary for our way of living and for our way of working. So I personally believe that we will, come back to a mixture of being in offices, but also probably more than ever before, more flexibility to work from home or other locations.
Mm-hmm. So how did you experience the benefits of a global interdisciplinary network during those times? Have you had more deeply exchange, or have you focused on your company's priorities and cocooned?
No, I actually have had 2 circles of regular discussions to exchange with other players from different angles in the industry. One was more a national exchange with people from different industries about what's going on and how we experience that. And one was more internationally and more real estate focused, to learn, what happens in the UK, what happens in France, what happens in Italy. Can we learn from each other? Do we find solutions for a problem? What is the outcome of, things like collection rate, the famous collection rate, how much rents do you collect, and the regulatory changes in environments. So I used, virtual way, whether it was Zoom or Teams or WebEx or Skype, on a daily basis to really get as much as information and exchange as possible. So it was really an easy way to do it, and you can easily continue to do that, even though offices are opening again.
Well, Jürgen, coming to ULI, during the last 6 years, you chaired ULI Germany for 4 years, and after that, ULI Europe. And yesterday, you passed on the baton to Manik Skal from Immobel, the new ULI Europe chair. You did a great job, Jürgen, in developing the organization and their mission-driven activities. What were your personal highlights during this time?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. It was a pleasure for me, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And I had a couple of highlights. One highlight was to hire you.
Oh, wow, thanks.
Because the outcome was fantastic, and it was a pleasure to work with you during my time at ULI Germany, Switzerland, Austria. Another highlight was clearly the Euro conference that was in Paris for 20 years, and we decided together with the leadership to move it around, and we have moved it first to Berlin. So that was a highlight, because it was the first conference outside of Paris in 20 years. It was a big success. We then moved it to London and then to Amsterdam, and each and every year we increased our expectations and our tendency and our revenues. But the biggest highlight was clearly to get to know a lot of really, really smart, interesting people, because that's ULI. ULI is a combination of different industries out of one industry. So everybody has to do with real estate, but looks at real estate from different angles. And that is a big, big positive for my development, because I've learned so much from people, talking to them, meeting them, being part of these product councils or panels and events. And I wouldn't like to miss that.
And how will you continue your commitment? And what are your ideas for ULI in the future? So hopefully you will continue your commitment.
Well, once ULI, always ULI. So yes, first of all, I stay as part of the European Executive Committee as a humble member. I also am, proud to be a global governing trustee. So I will participate in other activities around ULI. And then I have some ideas of what to do in Europe, but it's too early to say. But, since I will have a little bit more time, not a lot, but a little bit more time, I am thinking about doing something new. And I will let you know first.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Well, we all know my last football question. And I think most of us know your answer to that. So, as you certainly agree, we will skip that part today. No. How could I skip the part at the end of a turbulent football season when the German champion has been determined? So congratulations to FC Bayern, as always. I suppose you're happy, aren't you?
Sure, I am. I'm an FC Bayern fan since I'm 5 years old, and I'm a member of the club. And I don't see how people get bored because we have been winning the championship 8 times in a row. The others just have to do better, But I'm very happy, and I'm looking forward to the stadiums to be open again, hopefully soon. And happy to go to see Bayern against Cologne with you next time.
Okay. But after Corona time, as you may have realized, that Cologne was so successful before the lockdown, has won 8 of 10 matches and was on a very, very good way. But the crazy people in Cologne, the crazy we are, we need the 12th man on the field. So without that one person or the crowd in the stadium, I don't know what has happened. It's a nightmare. So, well, we will see. But let's do it. Maybe next year. Hopefully it will be possible. So, okay, my last question is, what is your favorite city and why?
Wow, my favorite city. I don't have one favorite, but if I have to pick one out, it's Tokyo. I would have said I have 2. Really, there's 1A. Tokyo and Vienna. 2 completely opposite type of cities, completely different, but extremely attractive for different reasons. And although I can now go back to Vienna when I want, Tokyo is still difficult to go, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, many thanks, Jürgen, for the time you've taken, not only for this podcast today, but for the time you've invested in supporting ULI Germany and ULI Europe as chairman. We both have known each other for several years, and I had the pleasure of working closely with you. So I know how incredibly intense your commitment to ULI has been. And I'm delighted to hear that you will continue to support the organization as a member of the ULI Europe Executive Committee. I wish you and all listeners a hopefully relaxing summer. Our next podcast will be released in 1 month. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.